Hello, hello to my beautiful friends.
Hey Kenya, how are you?
I am good, Rukiya Michele. It's so good to see you. You have such a I don't know if people tell you this. You have such a bright smile. When you smile, it's not only just like your teeth and smile, but your cheeks and your eyes. Like it's just a really happy. Do people ever tell you that?
I People comment on my smile frequently actually, and so I have made it a point to try to do it much more than I normally would. I try to get out of my head and do it.
Good.
So yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I'm excited to have you on the podcast. To the audience, it's so funny. Starting this podcast, a lot of people are like, when you start a podcast, oh, you got to find your guests, you got this. And I'm like, but I know some really dope people. Like, I have some really amazing people in my life. And
Yeah.
so you are on the list of those people, and you're a dear friend and a sister. And so I always let the audience know that I'm going to have you really talk. But before I do, I'm going to read something to you. So I
Okay.
just want you to sit back and relax and,
Okay.
yep, just listen as we
Okay.
read.
All right.
All right. Rukiya Michele is a gifted communicator. She's a writer. She's a storyteller. She's a podcaster. She's a communications professor, and she's a coach. Words and connection are her things, and she's passionate about both. In addition to being a communications professor, Rukiya Michele is a thoughtful life coach specializing in communication confidence. Not just communication, y'all, the confidence by which to communicate, which is really unique. So I can't wait to dig into this. She's also using her gift of storytelling as a ghostwriter. Rukiya Michele is the host of the Soul Stories podcast, which you can find on all the podcast platforms, and it launched back in June 2020. It features and celebrates the inspired stories and perspectives of everyday Black folks. Ah, I love that. So of course, as a writer, I love that bio. But how did it feel with me actually reading it to you?
I was like, shoot, she dope. Like, hey girl, hey.
Hey, girl. Hey.
Hey, yeah, hey girl. It was interesting to hear that. Because I've spent so much time downplaying and denying so much of that, you
Yeah.
know, and so to write it and then to hear it was like, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I that's why, I love, at the beginning of every show, everybody, if you've been listening, I do this. I read people their own things. And of course they know what their bio is. They the ones that, typically give it to me. But I think it's a whole nother thing to hear it in the voice of someone else and not in your own head. Because note to everybody, most people where you see their bios, most people are writing their bios. I know it's in third person and it feels like, yes, you have the occasional, writer that's writing, some celebrity bios, but for the most part, most people that we're doing our own thing. So it's really cool to not just have be in your brain of, okay, how does this make sense, but to hear it back.
It's interesting you say that because I do write bios for small business owners for them personally as well as their business, and so
Mhm.
it's different. It's interesting to hear my own being read to me, even though I crafted it. But it does something else to you when you can hear someone reading that
Yeah.
about you. So I'm
Yeah.
glad you did that. Thank you. It
Yeah.
was yeah.
You're welcome. You're welcome because this is all about you. And that's
Okay.
that's what this whole podcast is about, sharing stories of people over 40, because I think there's a lot of assumptions about how life goes. Even those of us over 40 make some assumptions about how things are supposed to go, but I think when we actually hear how people are moving through their lives at this point, there is struggle, there is like things beyond what you would even think. So we want to spend some time hearing a little bit about, these roles that you play and I say not play, but roles that you have as coach, podcaster, and writer. But before I get into that, I would love to hear about, have you always been this communicator? Has this always been a part of your life? Or is this something that you have really stepped more into in this after 40 life?
Mm. That's a good question.
Mm.
This has always been me. Um, Giving what I hope is sage advice, helping my friends to see things from different perspectives, asking them to consider other ways of thinking or being, connecting with others through words, showing others how to connect to themselves or others through words. The truth is, that really has always been me.
Mm.
However, I think that since when I got to 45, and since that time, I've been more willing to see that in a way that may not be in the box or may not be in the conventional ways of seeing that or doing that. I've been more willing to let that be what it is without having to have so much definition around it or check the boxes around it or what have you.
Mm. Well, I met you, I think we were just hitting our 30s when we met. I wanna
Yeah,
say, yeah, just so
yeah,
on the tail end of 20s, starting the 30s,
yeah.
and yes, she has always, since I at least have known you, and it's so funny because now that I'm doing astrology pretty deep, I'm like, "Yes, Lord, she got Gemini all up in this chart," because I mean, from our first meeting, not only the bright smile, but yes, just this warm communication style and this style that is considerate of a whole situation and not just just the way that you talk, you give whole situations. So that's
Mhm,
I'm just really glad that you have made this more unconventional so that people
mhm,
have access to this in different ways.
mhm.
But yeah, but let's talk about before 40s. Let's talk about Rukiya and how she was taking care of herself prior to this. What was life?
You know, when I thought about that question, I, I wrote down some notes because sometimes I think to myself, I wish my guests would answer they got the questions, but some of the questions they had already. I wish.
Ah.
So anyway, so I decided to be the guest that I sometimes hope for. So I wrote down some things,
Oh.
and as I thought about life before 40, something that I wrote is that there was a lot of self-imposed struggle in my life
Mm.
before 40, a lot of self-imposed struggle. And the truth is that I grew up in a two-parent family home. My mom and dad had been married nearly 62 years when my mom passed away.
Wow.
To my knowledge, and this isn't to shame or anything, but we had a regular life. Like there seemed to be no affairs. If there were, I didn't know about them. There seemed to
Right.
be no quote unquote outside kids or what have you. So we just seemed to be just kind of regular old people, living our
Right.
lives. And and my parents had hopes for me, like many parents have hopes for their children, that they'll go to college, that they'll have a career, make a family, and be happy and successful and healthy and all those things. However, I fell in love when I was about 18,
Mm.
just a little bit before I turned 18. The very near end of my 17th year, I fell in love, and what that ended up looking like for me is to get married at 19.
Mm.
And my mom and dad were young when they got married; they were 18 and 20. Um, it didn't occur to me that they grew up in a different era and a different time, which I think they understood, but they weren't able to articulate that to me. So I heard in their concerns what I thought was hypocrisy.
Mm. Interesting. Interesting.
And there's something about that now where I work with people, even in coaching, is that um, an immature person hears hypocrisy. A mature person hears a lesson in caution.
Mm.
You
Yeah.
know, I
Yeah.
didn't know that at 19. And
Yeah.
so as a result, I set out on a path where my friends were going to HBCUs, Grambling, and other places. Fam, I heard get married because you're in love, and that this is the rest of your life.
Mm.
So it created a lot of struggle for me from the age of 19 up until almost about 30, almost about the time that I met you. So that meant that I was delayed in my education, I was delayed in my career. Yet I had these children to deal with, to raise. I had a husband. That marriage ended pretty quickly, but that was not before children and pain and all of the things.
Mm,
All the things. So there was a lot of struggle in my life
mm,
before 30. That was really because of my own choices. Because I was jumping the gun with things, and I didn't see that what I felt at 17, 18, or even 19 wasn't necessarily going to be what I felt at 25 even.
exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
so
Exactly.
so I didn't take a lot of care of myself during that time.
Mm. Wow. Well, first of all, thank you for that transparency, that humility to even say, self imposed struggle, which is really powerful to say, because I think people are very quick to talk about their struggle, but not very quick to admit their role in the struggle. And that is, I think, when you have the awareness to see your role in a struggle, to me, that's what actually allows so much more of a bloom. If you are thinking that life is just a struggle, um is it can get much worse because you're not seeing your role and how you may be perpetuating it. So what do you think it was? Is it something in your person, like, what do you think? Was it just a youth situation, or do you find that that's something even at this stage of life in terms of self-imposed struggle that you have to be wary of? Like, has that always been a little bit of the rhythm, or that was just that phase of life that was happening?
Let me make sure I understand the question. Are
Mhm.
you saying that self-imposed, the idea that self struggle can be or is, and many times self-imposed, is that what I see now, or is that how I saw it then?
Do you feel that that trait or that ability to do that, like, was that just a thing that you fell into that at that stage of life, but you don't that's not something that you really face at this phase of life? Like, you don't self-impose yourself in these spaces of struggle? Or is that something that you have to watch? Because sometimes,
Okay.
yeah, you
I
see what
think
I
it's
mean?
something. Yeah, I think it's something you have to watch, including me,
Mhm.
because I do think that if we come into a here's an example of how we are often self-imposed and struggle even at this stage.
Mm.
If we come into a situation and we say, um, I want to do a podcast. I know it's going to be hard. You have self-imposed yourself into struggle already.
Yeah.
Hmm. I know I want to make 10 grand this month. I know that's going to be a challenge. You have self-imposed yourself into struggle
Yeah, yeah,
in those small, unwitting little ways.
yeah, yeah,
We put ourselves into a space of struggle.
yeah, yeah,
And so I do my best now to be conscious of that more quickly than before.
yeah,
But I don't think that the notion that we put invite struggle into our lives. I don't think that that's a youthful thing or an old thing or anything. I just think it's a thing, and we have to constantly be aware and attuned and in tune to when we are doing that. So
yeah.
I do try to do it less now, but I recognize that at any moment I can have a thought or belief that is struggle in its very nature.
Amen. Okay, so you just really broke that down even clearer than I was anticipating, because and I hope everybody heard you, because the power of the word, which I know you understand that beyond, but the power of our words, because our thoughts follow all of this. Our actions follow our thoughts. And then this is the chain we create. So if we reverse that and have the word be of the affirmative or of the abundance, that is how then we start, creating quote, you hear people about manifestation, it becomes this really woo woo thing, but it's like, well, if we just kind of just sit still for a minute and just think about, where is your mind? If your mind is in a less, why would you get a more? Like why would that happen? So thank you for breaking that
Yeah.
down,
Yeah.
because can you be on the struggle bus a lot? So I know that
Yeah.
was really helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, really, we don't often take ownership of that one because it's so almost mundane to think
Mhm.
thoughts like that. It's almost such a just an embedded thing. Whereas if I said, "Oh, I dated this man who showed me signs that he was an abuser," you know, that's such a like a red
Right.
flag type thing that you can
Right.
see how you put yourself into that, but not
Right.
thinking that our everyday life has an opportunity or it has moments where we could succumb to self-imposed struggle, and so
Yeah.
we don't see it as clearly, I think, as those things like the big red flags.
Mm. Ah, okay. So you guys need to go to Rukiya's podcast, because this is the thing. The reason why I'm saying that is because you do, I think, I don't know how many episodes, but I've heard some where you're really telling your story. And I think you've done, when you turned 50, you did a really, really beautiful job of showing these different phases of your life and how you moved through them. And some of those things, I was in the moment, friends with you, but of course hearing the behind the scenes and the thoughts was really, really powerful. And so we could literally, because you have a very powerful 20s 30s story, like really you went through a lot. I mean,
A
a lot is,
lot.
yeah, I said a lot is an understatement. So, well, we don't have time to go through. So I want y'all to make sure I'm gonna put a link to her podcast, because, and I'm sure she'll talk a little bit more about that. But you really want to hear it, because it gives you, I think it gives you a lot more insight to what you're talking about with this self-imposed struggle, or just navigating struggle, and how
Yeah.
you still come ahead. So but we don't have time to go through all the, but
Right.
I do wanna say this, you are now over 40, and
Yeah.
you are, maybe for a moment, let's just explain, because some people may not understand when you say communications coach, or what does that exactly mean?
So here's the thing. Um, we take for granted that we know how to communicate by and large because we've been talking since we were 2 or 3 years old and really communicating, if you will, quote unquote, since we were 5 or 6, full sentences and reading books and all the things. And that's great. However, talking and communication share vocal cords.
Mm.
That's really the extent of their relationship to one another. As the old folks used to say, talking loud and saying nothing. You can
Yes.
literally be talking and not saying a doggone thing,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so, as a result, I recognized over the years of teaching that who we are as communicators, by and large, is based on the environment in which we learned to quote unquote communicate or to speak. The truth of the matter is that in communication, we say that communication has occurred when understanding has occurred.
Mm.
And every
Okay.
time you talk, every time you speak, communication hasn't occurred because understanding has not happened.
Mm,
And so we take this for granted because we're
mm,
using our vocal cords all the time to produce sound, to produce words, etc. And so as a coach, I work with people to hone in on what some of their challenges or triggers may be,
mhm,
and how we, first of all, why are they there? What are they? Where did they come from? As you know, as any kind of coaching parameter would do, what is this thing? Where does it come from? And then how do we move through that or past that? How do we neutralize that in a way that can help us to elevate? And so, in
mm,
this way, I look at it from a a communication perspective. When I was certifying as a life coach and all that, I don't know what I wasn't necessarily thinking about communication. I was
mm,
just thinking that, gosh, I've been doing this since I was kind of in my 20s, and I really want to do this now, so I'm gonna do it now. But then the communication thing just kept coming up and coming up and coming up, and
mm,
I attach it to teaching. I've been teaching communication now for 19 years.
Yeah.
So it's a very embedded thing. Plus all the years I spent before that writing and storytelling. So
Right.
words and communication is a thing that's in me. But I want to help people to figure out the ways in which they can have better experiences with themselves and others by elevating their communication, by really becoming effective in their communication. Even now, like one of the things I'm doing now is working with folks, and I'm saying, hey, um, I guess I can keep it PG, but basically, do they have you effed up? And so I'm asking people, are you frequently saying you got me effed up or they got me effed
Yeah.
up? The truth is, it's not them, it's you.
Mm,
It's
okay.
you. How are you processing what they said, or how are you processing the tone? How are you processing this thing? And is it about them, or is it about some other stuff back here?
Mm,
We need to talk. Why does that trigger you? Why does why are you bothered by that phrase, we need to talk? Why? Because someone broke up with you last time you heard that, or your
yeah.
parent was quote unquote nagging you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So through communication coaching, I want to help people to um, get more comfortable with speaking in ways that serve them well as their relationships.
Oh my gosh. I love so of course in my head I'm thinking of all the clients I coach. I got to go send them to Rukiya. And seriously, because I do think what I mean, you just said something again, super duper profound, particularly for coaches, because as a coach, I know myself as a coach, I am attempting to understand, my client fully so that I can one see the unspoken because as a coach, I've
Mhm,
got to also
mhm,
be able to pay attention to what's not being said.
mhm,
um, and being able to get your client to see their own unspokens, to be able to understand the context of how they are even speaking,
mhm,
thinking is so this is how we start really getting into the history, the conditions, the environments, the stories, the limited beliefs, the narratives, all of that. So for a person to be thinking, "Oh, I just need to be better with my communication." No, girl, that's some serious therapy right there because there's a lot that's going to get unpacked when you look at it at
mhm,
the context that you just
mhm,
said.
mhm.
Mm.
Real quick, I want to interject this, make it really
Yeah.
short.
Yeah.
When I was teaching at Malcolm, so this is like my first full-time year teaching full time, and that's all I do now. And I had a student who I was giving feedback on their speeches, and I videotaped them, VHS, the whole nine. You know how long ago that was now, right? And so we were doing a playback. And prior to the playback, she looked at her grade and she told me, I didn't do that. You great, you marked me down. And she was giving me the whole business. So when the playback came, she stayed after class and she apologized to me for her behavior because now she saw what I was saying. And then basically said that I was being generous. And then she
Oh.
started kind of railing in on herself about she didn't do this, this, this. I mean, she was really beating herself up. So I was like, whoa, whoa, wait a minute. I'm still the professional. I'm still the expert in the room. So if I didn't mention any of those things, then it must
Yeah.
not really be anything to mention. Well, as we continued to talk, and I talked to her about the volume of her voice, and we needed to hear her, she needed to project. She shared with me that she was raised by an aunt and uncle, and that she frequently heard, "Shut up, ain't nobody ask you.
Mm. Mm.
Shut up, ain't nobody ask you." And so I was like, I
Yeah.
see. This is
Yeah.
why you don't project, because your voice has been diminished since you were younger. The people who reared you
Yeah.
gave you a belief that, or from what they said, you formed a belief that your voice didn't matter, what you had to say to contribute didn't matter, and that has physically manifested in
Yes.
this small voice that can't hardly be detected or heard, even when you have the room, when you're at
Yeah.
the front of the room. It's deep.
It's so deep. And, obviously the name of this podcast is Finding Your Voice. So my whole point is what you just this is like the point is I do believe when we get over 40, there's all those stories get collected in us. And it's hard for us to find the voice that is ours for real, and not the voice that we've been conditioned to constantly think we are. And the thing is once you get after 40, just spiritually, soul's not is not playing around at that point. So
Sure.
so speaking of soul,
Sure.
those of you who are not seeing Rukiya, her face, she's just like, oh Lord, this is the thing.
Sure.
Soul is not playing around. And so while we talk a bit about soul, what was that? You kind of the side eye roll. Tell me more about that. Well, that's communicating something. So
It
what
is communicating something.
what did you feel in me saying that soul ain't played around?
So what I can say is that I remember I wrote this down. I remember, and I was definitely over 40, but I remember some years ago when I first started thinking, okay, maybe I need to get out of the classroom. And I was so hesitant to that because I love teaching. And I just at that time couldn't see it in a different way or coaching or sir, I just couldn't see it. But I was the school was giving me the business and not my employer, but teaching and
Mhm.
students and the parameters. Everything was giving me the business. And I remember one time we were at dinner. I was at home, for holiday or whatever, and we were at dinner. And you said, girl, I'm gonna keep praying that the universe keeps making you uncomfortable. And, oh my God. And so I know I was over 40 when this happened. I know I'm
Yeah,
over 40 when this happened. And so when you were talking about spirit and how it, soul is like, yes, it's something about when you hit 40. It is like, bang, get it, get it, get it, get it. And you're like, no, I don't want to get it. Okay, get it. And so since I
yes,
hit 40, and especially when my mom died,
yeah,
it was a few months before I turned 45. Then it was like another gear kicked in. Girl,
girl.
girl. And so now I'm at another one, and that's for us girlfriend talk another time. But I just have to tell you and tell the listeners that there becomes, even if you don't know what it is or can articulate it, there becomes a different level of urgency and, for lack of a better word, like gnawing, nagging,
Mhm.
poking, pressing, pushing. There, it becomes different once you hit 40, and by 45, it increases. And then as you're getting 50, it's increasing again. And it is a serious thing where it's like your life is, it's like JoJo Dancer, your life is calling, girl, your life is calling.
Yes, it is. It is.
It,
It is.
Oh, it is. And so, if you want to put it back to voice, if we can use this metaphor, the voices in your head, the spirit in your head, the calling in your life, the purpose in your life, it gets louder and louder and louder, and you are trying to ignore it because for whatever reason, it ain't what you want to do for
Right.
whether it's a relationship, a job, a career,
Right.
or whatever it is. But it is getting louder and louder, and you're going to just, I mean,
I
it can get as loud as it needs to get. Now, what you gonna do?
what you gonna do?
Yeah.
Okay, so that is a drop of mic. And this is this was so wonderful about you is you articulate what's going on in my head in such a powerful way. And yes, soul, and that is another podcast, but understand your soul knows exactly why it wanted to come here. It was very specific. Now, you are a human being, you have choice. You can go this way, that way. That is the gifting of this human existence. And people want to say, oh, it was the devil. No, it was the human that said, I have the choice and I can do this or I can do this. Or I'm being tempted by the well. But that is the human. But the soul knows exactly where it's trying to go. So when those loudness and that gnawing and that nagging, it's because it knows exactly what it needs for you. You just have to start to either one, remember that, stay tuned to it, allow it, accept it, and that is, that's the journey. And because we do have a finite amount of time here, I do think at that 40-50, when it knows we at the half mark, chick, like, and it's time, the gifts, the talents, the beauty, and it's not the time to fall, it's the time to fly. And a lot of times I think we think we've been flying, but that wasn't really the flight.
And it's interesting you said that because I think that has been a big part of my own personal struggle is that I thought I was already flying. Once I finished my degrees and I was doing my quote unquote dream job, college professor, and doing all the things, I thought that I was flying until
Mm,
one day I realized, but I still don't feel like this is it, but I just don't know how to get to the next level, the next, launching pad or what have you. And I feel like, I've been flailing for the last, literally, I was up this morning at my altar and I was like, oh God, okay, I'm literally just hitting the 4 year mark and 4 years in a week or 4 years in a few
mm,
weeks at this point. And it's
mhm,
like, I should have something figured out by now. It shouldn't still be this hard. And I had to
mm.
ask myself, is it really hard? Or are you literally being complicit and acting like you don't know? Okay, then. All right. Let
Yeah.
me stop
That's it. Oh my God, we could go on and on. That's so good. It's just so good because we just don't have many spaces, especially as Black women, Black people beyond women. And I bring this up because there has to be so much safety to admit. I mean, you are very connected to self. And like you just mentioned, going to your altar and to spirit and to ancestors. And that is your way of life, which that's what I want to go into next. And we're gonna have to wrap it up because I'm like, that clock cannot say 30 minutes, but it
I
does.
know.
It just can't. Um, but a lot of people are not connected or aware, and it's not because they don't want to be. It's just, that requires a whole nother movement in your life to have that. So okay, all right. So let me ask you a bit about self-care. And as you are in this space that is, new questions, new like, oh Lord, challenges. At the same time, you have achieved, and I hope you are giving you your flowers, all that you've done, this lifetime, and particularly as you've taken different leaps of faith to really pursue what you desire. How do you nurture yourself? How do you do self-care so that you have a sense of thrive and keep moving toward these dreams and goals?
Friend, I'm still working on this one
Yeah. Yeah.
because if when my money isn't quote unquote right,
Mhm.
then the pedicure might be out the door, but that
Yeah.
doesn't negate the need for self-care.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
sometimes it looks like staying in bed all day. Like today, I put my phone on do not disturb and I am here and I'm
Yeah.
resting and I'm allowing myself to take 3 naps throughout the
Yep.
day or whatever that, however many naps it is. Sometimes it's, you know what, I got to get out of my head. I'm feeling in a funk. Let me get this music going. And I got
Mhm.
my playlist running.
Mhm.
It always I want to say always, but maybe that's hopeful. But it does include a lot of time at my altar. A lot of time, at my
Mhm.
altar. And it's funny because I had an altar. My first altar I built when I was in my 20s when I lived in San Diego. And then I didn't have an altar for many, 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 many years. And today, when I sit at my altar, I ask myself, girl, I don't even know how you made it through your 30s and 40s. Like, how did you even make it the altar in your
Yes.
head, because you certainly didn't have a safe, sacred place. Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's time at my altar. Sometimes it's just going for a walk, but it is many times, as you said, making sure that I remember and give myself the flowers of my life up to this point. And that is very critical, I think, for the care of yourself, especially when you are um, taking different risks and leaps of faith. Because when it's
Mhm.
not, I think we remember once we got our degree and we were professionals, but we forget
Mhm.
about the nights that we were struggling in chemistry or calculus or statistics. We forgot about those nights. We forgot about the times where we needed help and assistance because we don't remember that part. We just remember,
Right.
my degree was conferred and now I'm a professional. So
Right.
part of that self-care is to be gentle and compassionate with myself in the same way that I would with one of my closest friends or a client. I
Mm.
have to sometimes be my friend and be my client.
Yes. Yes. And I think it's hard for coaches and people who help people because one, your energy. is usually more focused, not more, but you have a specific level of energy that's focused on how you pay that forward, how you support others. Doing that for yourself, you absolutely intellectually know that, right? But emotionally, that's a whole, I mean, you got to go through your own healing. You have to go through your own
Mhm,
process to be able
mhm.
to do that. And that's not just a given because you become a coach.
Oh
You
no.
you have to actively, yeah, pursue that. So Ah, honestly, okay, we gotta do part 2 because you're bringing up so many beautiful things, and I really loved what you said about the altar. I wanna talk more to people about this idea because I think right now we're in a really critical state of and I keep bringing up as Black people, and I think as whoever, as Indigenous people, because those are the things that historically got us through and gave us our power. And, we've been stripped from it for so long. The fact that we've been so bamboozled to think it's the thing that will hurt us
Mhm,
is insanity. And it is the very thing that will pull us and make us the powerful selves that we are.
mhm.
So it's that's a whole nother thing. All right. So we're gonna wrap up. I'm gonna ask you this. I have two more questions. Two more questions.
Okay.
What are you looking forward to the most at this stage of your life?
Softness.
Ooh. Now, you can't
I
just leave that. What
I
what
am looking forward to living in a space of softness where um and I said, and when I wrote that down, I said, and this definitely is a story for another day. But in
Yeah.
this season where I can be safe, I can feel safe, I can feel free to be open and vulnerable. Um, I can experience a level of trust myself that I'm okay, that I'm going to make the right decisions, trust that I am going to do the right thing, and trust the people in my space. Um,
Mm.
Easy, um, soft, where I don't have to be on guard all the time or
Aw.
hard all the time or waiting for the shoe to drop all the time or waiting for that BS to come all the time. Like, no, soft.
Soft. I love that you use the word soft. Girl, you about to put me into a whole nother part of the episode. Okay. So I use that same. So hearing you say, I've never thought of it as, well, I've maybe thought a moment of soft, but I think of it as ease and
Mhm,
just
mhm.
having a certain ease about things. And I'll have to share with you. I'm going to try to pitch and see if I can get this woman on the podcast. I don't know her personally, but she's doing a beautiful job on YouTube talking about. She's really focused on helping Black women move abroad. But the point of
Oh,
that,
Stephanie?
yes,
Uh-huh.
yes,
Mhm.
I love to I've been, like, kind of addicted. I went down a rabbit hole and landed in her YouTube, and now I'm just like so, but for me, it's not so much about, "Okay, how can I plan my move?" Although, don't sleep, that's another
Mhm.
thing. But hearing how
Mhm.
she's talking about Black women and our need for that softness,
Mhm.
for that ease, for
Mhm.
and how we have to get out of this mindset of equating our worth to this struggle that has been so imposed on us, and that in fact there is
Mhm.
a world for us to go live in a way that you just described. So
Mhm.
I'm, those of you who are wondering, Stephanie Perry, and I hope I can get her. I have a friend who was actually a guest on her YouTube page, and I'm gonna see
Mm.
if I can kind of be seriously thought of to
Now,
come on here.
the irony of it is that this morning I recorded some videos and I finally got to the one I was like, okay, this is good. And this is it. And I uploaded it. And when I went into my YouTube channel to upload it, there was a video of one of the more recent videos that Stephanie had posted about income rivers. And I was getting
Yeah.
ready to watch it. And I thought, okay, I don't have time. I got to finish what I'm doing, but I'm going to go back to that. So literally, when I opened it, she was the person looking at me when I opened it. So that's the other reason why when you said it, I was very attuned at that moment. Like, oh, she's talking about
Yeah.
because I do
Yes.
follow her, and yeah. So yeah.
And that's a good I saw that in my binge watch. It's a very good episode.
Hmm.
Even the whole notion of river and not thinking of streams.
Stream.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, it was really clever. So, all right, we have to wrap up. We are gonna do
Okay.
bonus.
Okay.
So, by the time our listeners hear this, because we batch record earlier, I believe that our bonus may be available, only on Patreon. but that this regular part of our video is going to be available on YouTube. So if you're wanting the bonus part, you come over to the Patreon side. So we're going to be pausing in just a moment to get just a little bit more insight, particularly some tips about this whole communication piece and how we can be more effective. If that's something that really resonated with you, which it really did with me, in terms of the communication versus talking, like that's yes, very much so. But before we go to that, can you please share how can people get in touch with you if they want to get services from you? I'm going to put a link of the podcast in the show notes, but provide all the goods.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I've enjoyed being here. For those who want to find me, connect with me, of course, you can find me on YouTube, not YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Rukiya Michele. You can find my podcast, Soul Stories, Rukiya Michele. And then also, if you go to any of those, I have my link tree because I have different sites that you can click on. So please go there, click. You can find my website. You can find out how to book sessions with me and all the good things. So I'll tell you to go there because all the links are there. But I usually give tips on communication in both Instagram and Facebook. And I'm always looking for new folks who really want to elevate their communication. So yeah.
It's such a big need. It's such a big need. People don't even, I think a lot, I mean, half people know it, but a lot of people, I'm about to refer like all my faculty, all my teachers get, because yeah, because that's a big part of being able to teach is can you be understood? I know you're talking, but do people understand you? How about that?
Yeah.
All right. And then lastly, I always ask about theme songs. What is a song for you right now, or just in life, that is what you consider your theme song?
So my current theme song, I suspect, I'll be turning 51 in a month, so that may be changing. But my current theme song is a song that turns 19 years old this weekend. It is Soul Star by Music, and it's really the chorus, which is Soul Star, you've come so far from where you started. Don't be afraid to let your light shine on the world. That's
Mm.
that's that's me right now. That's me.
Yeah, now you're gonna make me because I love music. I was actually listening to Music Soul Child the other 2 days ago? I just randomly was like, because his old stuff, my God, it's just
Yeah,
so good. That's so good.
yeah.
Awesome. Well, that will be added to the playlist. That is a goodie. That is a really
Hmm.
good one. That's really he has a lot of really good he has a lot of really good inspiring songs when you sit down and listen to him lyrically. I think a lot of
Definitely.
people get caught up because musically he's really good, and so you get caught up in the beat and the music, but it's like, no, listen to what he's saying because he's
Hmm.
saying some really good stuff. Well,
Definitely.
this has been amazing. We're going to continue. We're going to pause in a moment, but for the general audience just listening, you have been amazing. And I knew. This is why I was like, and I also, I was a guest on Rukiya's podcast. And, one of the things, obviously, I'm all about, supporting each other. So there was no way. I mean, even if I thought you were horrible, you were going to be invited. But I didn't because I was on your podcast. No, but no, seriously, I knew that wasn't possible. And I just love you so much. And I still am so proud. And I know that this is it's super uncomfortable. Raise my hand to the highest in doing entrepreneurial things. It is a lot. It is a lot that a lot of people at the same time you are the vessel. And I don't know anybody, Rukiya, honestly, like you, who is really tapping into what you talked about today as a communication coach. I really have never heard anybody articulate it so holistically. So I'm just sending you lots of love.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's always a pleasure to spend time with you. So yes.
Ah, awesome. All right. For general audience, we'll be back next week. All right. Bonus. Okay. So we
Hey.
don't have a whole bunch of time for bonus, but
Okay.
I would love for you to provide some tips to that person, um, who, without you, I don't want you to give away all your, because we want you to get paid for the real. But that person who is like, I am really struggling with my ability to be an effective communicator in my relationships, at work. Like there's just general thing that so many people tell me I'm confused, or just they just feel like they're not really effective. What are some things that you think, or what are some tips to become a more effective? Or is it that simple? Might not be that simple.
Well, first of all, interestingly enough, I lost my audio for just a few moments.
Oh.
So 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 I didn't hear anything until is it that simple? Baby, I don't know. It probably is exactly that simple. I don't know. But
No, I can repeat it. It's fine. I'm glad you at least said that so that you weren't like, my life is simple, but no, I
what
would
are some
say,
tips?
yeah, some tips for someone who's on the struggle bus of they're feeling like they're not being effective in communicating in their
Hmm.
relationships, like their
Hmm.
friendships, their family, their colleagues, like they feel like they're constantly misunderstood.
Hmm.
Is there anything that you could offer? And it doesn't have to be a necessarily tip, but just something that you would offer to the person who
Hmm.
feels like that.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
It is such a heavy burden when we feel like we are being misunderstood by the people closest to us, people that we love and sincerely want to connect with and have special, very intimate, experiences and exchanges with. And so this is something that's really important for me because I have one relationship in particular with one of my children where it's just I never can get it right in this particular moment. And I don't want anyone to hear me say that and say, well, why would I hire you? It's not that. It's because I understand. I'm empathetic towards that. I understand. So, first of all, we have to know the difference between when we are not getting it right and people who are committed to misunderstanding us.
Ooh. Ooh. Ooh.
Whether their commitment is intentional or just
Yeah.
because of so many other things. But the first thing you have to do is to understand the difference between the two.
Mm,
There are situations in our lives where there are people who are committed to making you the bad guy and committed to misunderstanding what you're saying.
mm.
It's just that simple.
It's just that simple.
Um, so, so for those people, for the other people, for the
Yeah.
people who are not in that category, one of the things I think that you can do, one of the most important things we can do to make sure that we are creating better communication is to have at least one person who you really trust, who you can do perspective taking with.
Mm.
This is the person who you really value their opinion. You believe that they can be unbiased, that they can see things from both sides. And hopefully this isn't the person you're having the issue with. So
Right.
it's this outside person. And you go to this person and you give them the screenshot, or you give them the email, or whatever the thing is. If you need to block out names for privacy's sake, do what you need to do.
Mhm.
But you ask them to read this, or to listen to you recount this story or what have you, and ask them their perspective. If you have true people in your life, they'll be able to tell you, yeah, I think you overreacted with that one, or here's
Mhm.
where I think you could have been a little bit more clear,
Yeah.
as to what you were saying. And sometimes it could be simple little pivots, like the other week a lady said, if I came to you and said, we're going to move the time up for the meeting, would you think it goes from 11 to 12, or would you think it goes from 11 to 10? I said, well, it doesn't matter, because an effective communicator would have simply said, we're going to change the time from 11 to 10.
Right. Right.
it doesn't
Right.
leave it doesn't leave any interpretation. It doesn't leave
Right.
any vagueness or ambiguity. It doesn't leave any of that. And so that's one of the ways in which we can work to be better understood, is
Yeah.
by using language that is very clear and doesn't leave a lot of room for interpretation, misunderstanding, feelings, depending on how a person feels right now. Well, why would you change the you knew I was the meeting is changing from 11 to 10. That's very clear. And we know with that what to do. I can call you and say, hey, listen, I'm not going to be available at 10.
Right.
As
Right.
opposed to, I didn't think you meant 10 because you knew I had something going on. So it had to be 11. Ah,
Girl, I'm bringing you.
Clarity.
So we're gonna be doing I'm really serious about this. I'm gonna be following up because you need to come talk to my students. You need to
It's,
do a
you know what it
session.
is? It's clarity. Clarity and communication is serious business. And I was working with a client this summer, and a lot of what we talked about every week, it kind of just kept coming back to clarity, because we underestimate what's clear for you may not be clear for another person. So we do have to use clear language. Red is red, blue is blue. There's no mistaking. You're not going to mistake either of those for yellow.
Right. No,
And
girl.
yeah.
I'm serious. I'm listening, and this is what I encounter all day because, again, back to what you were saying when we were earlier, it's because of the things playing on in people's minds that they create room for passivity. They create because they don't want to be necessarily held responsible for or committed to a certain thing, because if it doesn't turn out right or if something doesn't go out wrong, I can excuse myself a little bit.
Mm,
And that's what I find a lot is, helping people to be more clear and exact holds more I think sometimes people hold more responsibility depending on their stories. All
mhm,
right, girl. Okay, yes, we go on. All right, this is my last question. Is there
mhm.
something that I didn't ask you, and I'm sure a lot because we were talking about, but that I didn't ask you that you wish I would have, or something that you really want the audience to know about you?
Okay, so I want to just say real quick, I love this question because it's one that I ask on Soul Stories
Oh,
also, and I always think it's a beautiful story question to ask. So
yeah.
what I would say is that um, finding your voice is so important, not to only ourselves, but to those that we are meant to serve. And finding our voice, just like effective and elevated communication, it requires us to constantly be in tune with and attuned to the stories that we are telling ourselves,
Mm,
and the stories that we have latched on to because these are the stories that other people gave us, intentionally or unintentionally. And so we're constantly doing the work to excavate these stories and to be able to hold in front of us the true stories, and to know that stories also change over time and over seasons of our lives. So for those people who are looking to become more effective communicators, know that it is possible. And the most thing that you need in order to be an effective communicator is the desire to be so. That's it. You have to be
mm.
motivated to be an effective communicator. And if you are motivated and if you have that desire, you will get there, even if it means it may change with whom you're communicating.
I know. And that's the part. That's the part, is helping people to accept change.
Yeah,
Cause yeah. Well, this has been fantastic.
absolutely. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. I have learned a lot. You have given me a lot of food for thought. My Gemini, was it moon and rising? You got Gemini moon and rising?
Moon and rising, yeah.
Lord Jesus.
With that Aquarius
With
sun. It can be, I can be
Aquarius.
a lot for myself sometimes, honey.
That's air. That's all air. That's all
All up
communication,
here. I'm just,
all ideas, all air, which I'm like, I got to see her chart because I'm gonna see, well, I gotta see where is her Capricorn, where is her Virgo,
you
where
should
is
see it. It's something else. Like when y'all look at my chart, I'm like, it's like maybe 6% water. I'm like, yeah.
wow.
I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And then I think secondary is fire. So I'm a lot of air, and then secondary to that is fire. I'm like,
So you're
yeah,
getting even more ammunition to do the air. So that's
yeah.
very interesting. And it's interesting because ironically, I only have water in like two areas of my chart. It's very, well, I mean, like okay, so my sun sign is Scorpio, but Scorpio
Hmm.
is a fixed water. So it's a bit of a different type of water. It's
Yeah,
not the same as a
yeah.
Pisces or a
It's good.
Cancer.
Right.
Um, but my rising is Cancer. So it's very interesting. But outside of that, I have a lot of Libra, which is why I believe I connect with my Aquarians so well, because I do have, I don't think I got no, wherever my Aquarius sits, it just sits. But I do have a lot of Libra energy,
Yeah.
which what allows me to, because I have a lot of Aquarian and Gemini people around me, which is really interesting. So,
Yeah, I have, that's me. That, I have a lot of Aquarians, Geminis, and then secondary to that would be Scorpios and Leos. And it's always fascinating to me because Leos are my opposite, and Cancer. So either Leo, either we are on or we're off.
yes,
And I
yes.
know the fullness of when we are off, Lord. Um, Lord. So yeah.
Ah,
So
I
as a
love
matter of
it.
fact, we should make a girlfriend night because yeah, yeah, it's the summer I spent at home ushered in a whole new situation.
Oh, we gotta do okay, so we gonna end the recording because now people are like, "Ooh, get the popcorn. What's she about to?" So
Yeah.
we're going to end this. Don't leave yet. Just stay right here. Did you wanna say one more thing
One
before we
more
end?
thing, to Kenya's point, I'm not trying to change anyone's belief system, but if your belief system already allows you to consider astrology, please tap in.
Yeah,
Tap in beyond your sun sign. If that's not your thing, please don't be offended because I'm not trying to push that on to you. But if that's something that you're already into, oh, I'm a Pisces, I'm a Sagittarius. If that's something you already do in your life, please consider researching and getting a natal chart done because the way you communicate and how that comes off to other people is so very connected to those
so tight.
things.
I'm now doing astro self-care coaching. So I've studied it. Now I haven't been as public talking about it
Oh,
because I know people get interesting when you start talking about astrology, but I've always been a student of astrology since I was little, but I got pretty heavy once COVID hit and I really realized, okay, we need to know what's these stars? What's happening here? What's going on?
yes,
And
yes.
so I actually have an astrologer who has been mentoring and coaching me. So now I can pretty much I don't my goal is not to be an astrology reader, but because it's so helpful for coaching when I know someone's astrology and I know how they're wired and I know energetically where I can push them and where I can't, it's been amazing. So yes, I am huge. When you know your astrology, I tell you, once you know how you're wired, I'm not saying it fixes, but it gives you so much confirmation and affirmation on your tendencies, the things you need to maybe release more, the things you need to push more into, lean more into. It's really phenomenal. So there's a reason
N-
why it exists.
Navigation tool.
Navigation. GPS, girl,
Yep,
GPS.
it is.
All right, we're going to end the recording. Don't you leave. You stay right there
Okay.
for just a second, and we'll be back next week, you guys. I hope you
Thanks
enjoyed
so
it as much as
much.
I did.
Thank you so much. I had fun.
Oh, you're welcome. All right, bye.